Like, comment, subscribe, share.
Okay, let's dive into this fascinating explainer. Today, we're exploring a classic dastan, an epic, traditional tale of fate, resilience, and honestly, the sheer unpredictability of life. I mean, if you've ever found yourself wondering whether we carve our own paths or if destiny has already drawn the map, the story of Yasir and Layla is going to leave you completely speechless. This narrative is absolutely packed with shipwrecks, ancient prophecies, stolen thrones, and the relentless, undeniable power of fate. As your host today, I am literally so excited to guide you through this source material. So let's just jump right in. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to start in the royal court of Baghdad, follow a bizarre flight to a mysterious island, witness a tragic prophecy actually come true, and then uncover the mystery of Princess Layla's stolen throne. Finally, we'll navigate a thrilling escape from a twisted queen before seeing how justice is served in the final journey. It's a massive, nested narrative, but don't worry, we're going to break the whole shebang down step by step. Section 1. The Baghdad King's Court. We're kicking things off with a classic frame story device, setting our stage right in the opulent court of the King of Baghdad. Picture this. The generous, benevolent King of Baghdad is just sitting by his magnificent coastal palace, enjoying the view of the ocean during the rainy season. And then, suddenly, he spots something super unusual. There's this tiny, lonely boat drifting directly toward his palace. Inside, a strikingly handsome young man and a beautiful young woman. Intrigued, right? The king immediately sends his men to bring them into the court. The young man, his name is Yasir, warns the king that his story is long and might just waste his time. But the king? He insists. He sends the young woman to rest with the queens and asks Yasir to recount his unbelievable tale. And just like that, our saga begins. Now notice how quickly Yasir's life spirals completely out of control. He was the son of a wealthy chief in Basra, orphaned at just 15, and inherited massive wealth. Sounds okay, right? But his peaceful life shatters when he has this absolutely terrifying nightmare. We're talking a dragon, blazing fire, a hurricane, a black snake, and a lion dragging him down a mountain. A trusted astrologer tells him, look, this is a terrible omen, and advises him to lay low and isolate himself. So Yasir, trying his best to outrun this bad omen, flees to a garden. But here's the kicker. In trying to avoid fate, he accidentally triggers it. Just trying to amuse himself, he attempts to trap a beautifully massive bird with a rope tied to his own waist. Bad idea. The bird panics, takes off, and literally sweeps Yasir right up into the sky. Section 2. Flight to the island. So Yasir is now dangling from a giant bird, flying so high he's terrified to even look down. The bird finally descends, landing on this massive tree on a strange, lush island all the way across the ocean. Yasir somehow manages to untie himself and climb down. He spends the whole day just eating fruit, catching his breath. But as night falls, the island completely transforms. Horrifying, deadly sea creatures actually emerge from the water and roam the land. Yasir barely survives by hiding high up in a tree, just trembling all night long. But as dawn breaks, the monsters retreat, and Yasir sees something entirely unexpected, a fleet of boats arriving right at the shore. Now, before we see exactly who is on those boats, we really need to talk about the core concept anchoring this entire tale: destiny. The inescapable sequence of events meant to happen, often unfolding despite our desperate, frantic attempts to avoid them. Keep this in the back of your mind because what happens next brilliantly illustrates this whole idea. The people disembarking from those boats, they set up a throne, leave behind a young, handsome boy with a bunch of supplies, say their goodbyes, and then immediately sail away, leaving this boy completely alone. Section 3. The tragic prophecy fulfilled. Let's look at the heartbreaking story of this isolated boy, Prince Hamza. So when Yasir finally climbs down and approaches him, the boy actually faints in sheer terror. Why? Well, because of a prophecy. When Prince Hamza was born, astrologers told his father, a neighboring king, that the boy would grow up to be a legendary ruler, but he had a deadly knot in his fate. At exactly 14 years of age, his life would be in grave danger. The only solution they could come up with? Isolate the prince completely for 10 days in a deserted place where absolutely no human could reach him. Look at the profound irony of this. The father's plan was flawless on paper, right? Put the boy on a monster-infested, remote island where literally no one travels, and that guarantees his survival for those 10 crucial days. But the reality? Fate used a giant bird to literally drop Yasir past all the defenses directly onto the island. The sheer irony here is just astounding. By trying to isolate his son to protect him from humans, the king placed him in a situation where he was utterly defenseless when a human inevitably showed up. Yasir, however, reassures the terrified prince. They bond, becoming fast friends, and Yasir joyfully serves him for 9 whole days. Okay, so the crucial point is, they make it to the 10th day. The curse is supposedly broken. They're celebrating, but then destiny strikes in the most mundane way imaginable. The prince asks Yasir to fetch and peel a beautiful apple from a nearby tree. Yasir gets a large knife from a chest and starts peeling. The prince, eager to see the apple, suddenly lifts his head from his pillow right as Yasir's hand moves forward. They collide, the large knife slips from Yasir's hand and plunges deeply into the prince's throat, severing his windpipe. Blood sprays everywhere, and the prince dies instantly. A simple act of peeling an apple literally became the vehicle for an inescapable prophecy. The very next morning, the king returns. He's expecting to celebrate his son's survival, only to find him dead, and Yasir sitting next to him in absolute shock. Yasir is beaten, imprisoned, and condemned. But the king refuses to execute him directly. Instead, he leaves it to this bizarre trial by fate called the Saza-e-Adal. It's a massive stone pillar over the ocean, functioning as a giant scale. To test it, they actually put an elephant on the scale, and it plunges into the ocean, drowning the beast. Then it's Yasir's turn. He's placed on the scale and dropped into the dark waters. But remember, destiny isn't done with Yasir yet. As he sinks, the turbulent water miraculously pushes him back up to the surface, and his hand violently strikes the wooden hull of a passing ship. He climbs aboard, narrowly escaping death. Section 4. Princess Layla's Stolen Throne. So, wet and exhausted, Yasir explores this luxurious, seemingly empty ship, and he finds a stunningly beautiful woman fast asleep, surrounded by her maids. He gently kisses her cheek, waking her up. This is Princess Layla. Layla shares her own incredibly tragic backstory. Step 1. Years ago, her father, who was a great king, rescued a woman and her baby boy from an abusive chieftain out in the wilderness. Step 2. The king mercifully adopted the boy, Nadir, raised him with immense love, and eventually handed the entire kingdom over to him. But Step 3. This act of ultimate kindness led to utter destruction. Nadir, completely corrupted by power, murdered his adopted father, Layla's dad, just to secure his rule. Nadir actually planned to kill Layla next, but her father's loyal minister, Vizier Hamid, secretly saved her. He set her adrift on this very ship with her maids, promising to call her back once he reclaimed the throne. Hearing her sorrowful tale, Yasir comforts her. Finding solace in their shared trauma and their incredible escapes from death, these two victims of cruel destiny fall deeply in love, and they actually get married right there on the drifting ship. But peace in this dastan is always short-lived. Section 5. Escape from the Queen. After 12 days at sea, Yasir and Layla finally spot land. A massive city. But as they approach, they are instantly ambushed by hundreds of armed Abyssinian soldiers in boats. Knowing a single man and a crew of women would be incredibly easy targets, Layla and her maids quickly disguise themselves in men's clothing, grabbing bows and arrows. A fierce, totally desperate battle erupts. The maids fight with unbelievable bravery, but they are vastly outnumbered. And eventually, tragically, all the maids are killed. Only Yasir and a disguised Layla survive, captured and dragged to the shore. On the shore stands the furious Abyssinian king. And why is he so angry? Well, during the battle, Yasir and his crew had managed to kill the Abyssinian prince. The king condemns them to the most brutal execution imaginable. Honestly, there seems to be absolutely no way out of this. But then, the dead prince's widow steps forward. She demands that the prisoners be given to her so she can personally torture them every single day to avenge her husband. And the king? He agrees. But this widow, the twisted queen of Zanzibar, has a really dark secret. When she looked at Yasir and the disguised Layla, she wasn't seeing murderers. She was entirely overcome by lust for their beauty. She locks them in her remote castle by the river, feeds them luxurious food, and confesses she actually wants them both as her new husbands. Layla is terrified she'll be discovered as a woman and killed out of sheer jealousy. So Yasir cleverly lies. He says they are brothers, and their religion forbids sharing a wife, convincing the queen to take only him. The very next morning, this ruthless queen actually decapitates her own king and brings his head to Yasir to prove her devotion. Realizing they are trapped with a total psychopath, Yasir bides his time until she forces them onto a getaway boat. Under the guise of conversation, he lures her to the edge of the boat and violently shoves her into the rushing river, finally escaping her clutches.
Section 6. Justice and Final Journey. Exhausted, they drift until they wash ashore on yet another island. They fall asleep under a tree, only to be awakened by a group of men surrounding them.
Leading these men is a young king. When Layla sees him, she is utterly paralyzed with fear. Why? Because fate has brought them directly to the kingdom of Nadir, the very usurper who murdered her father. Now, Nadir doesn't recognize her in her male disguise, and he graciously offers them a place to stay in his palace. Yasir even becomes a favorite companion of Nadir. But one day, Nadir visits Yasir's house unannounced and spots Layla in her women's clothing through a window. He immediately recognizes the princess he was supposed to kill. He rushes to his vizier to plot her assassination. But guess who this vizier is? It's none other than the loyal vizier, Hamid. Hamid pretends to agree, but secretly rushes to Yasir, rallies all the loyalists in the city, and that very night, they ambush and kill the usurper Nadir. Justice is finally served. Layla asks Yasir to take the throne, and he rules peacefully. But eventually, Yasir grows homesick. Leaving Vizier Hamid in charge, Yasir and Layla set sail for Basra with a massive escort of 1,000 armed soldiers and immense treasure. However, a terrible storm blows them off course for days, landing them on an unknown shore. A local, super paranoid king assumes they're an invading force and attacks them relentlessly for 3 days. On the final night, the local king launches a devastating ambush with an overwhelming force of over 3,000 soldiers against Yasir's exhausted 1,000 men. Yasir's entire army is slaughtered.
Yasir and Layla barely escape with their lives into the forest. They hide in caves by day and travel by night. Finally, they build a crude wooden raft by tying logs together and push it out to sea, trusting fate one last time. And where does that raft drift? Directly to the coastal palace of the King of Baghdad, bringing us right back to the very first moment of our explainer today. The King of Baghdad, moved beyond words by this unbelievable saga of survival, immediately issues a royal decree, granting Yasir the governance of the city of Basra. Yasir and Layla finally return home, reuniting with loved ones and living out the rest of their days in peace and prosperity.
Which leaves us with this final, profound thought. Think about Prince Hamza's father trying to hide his son on an island, or Yasir trying to outrun a bad dream. Every single attempt to escape their fate was the exact action that caused it to happen. So what do you think? Can destiny ever truly be outrun? Or are we merely walking the exact path it carved for us? It's a completely fascinating question, and this incredible dastan certainly makes you wonder. I hope you enjoyed this explainer as much as I loved sharing it with you. Until next time, keep exploring.